very good evening and thank you for joining us. Welcome to the program. Tonight, a story of hope, and as she describes it in her book, The Faith and the Triumph of a Woman Amidst the Storm of Life. But let's set the stage and find out what Hellen's story is all about. The Lord's Resistance Army is a rebel group that is accused of widespread human rights violations, including murder, abduction, mutilation, child sex slavery, and forcing children to participate in hostilities. Well, tonight on the show, we meet one of those people who was abducted by the group in the early 1990s. It was 1992, Hellen, wasn't it? 1991, okay. So let's welcome Hellen Auma, who was only 21 years old when she was kidnapped in 1991. Hellen, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, and good to be here.
All right. Well, Hellen didn't come alone. Hellen came along with a friend who was also at the same college when the abduction took place, Susan Awidi.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for coming.
I'm glad to be here.
Well, I know a bit about Hellen's story after reading both of the books of us that I fell on. I would like to also know what your story was, because you were there in 1991 when the abduction took place, and from Hellen's book I know that you ran away. Somehow you survived, you know, walking those miles to the bush. So I'm going to come to your story in a bit. But Hellen, it's good to see you. Thank you for agreeing to come and share your story with us. So March 13th, 1991, the abduction.
Yes.
When we talk about that period of your life, what goes through your mind?
I still remember so clearly the banging at the door at that moment. I still remember the stench that the rebel came in with and the scary dreads that they had. The screams, yes. The screams that the girls had. It was so scary. So
you escort, was it you who wanted to use the bathroom or one of the other girls?
One of the other girls.
And you escorted her outside to use the toilet?
Yes.
And you came back and did you doze off again?
And immediately almost there was a bang.
Okay. At what point had you heard about the LRA at any point in your life before they actually came to your school?
Yes, several times, because there were actually abduction in Gulu, in Kitgum, and part of the bordering counties in Lira and Apache. So it was a daily story.
Did you ever think this would be a story that would come close to home?
No.
Why not?
Because I thought my place was really so far from where they had been before, and my school was in the center of the town. How was I going to be part of that?
Susan, you look like you want to say something.
Thank you, Jasmine. For me, actually, I was one of the two out of the girls, all the girls at the college.
So just to give a bit of history, there were 24 girls and 11 boys that were abducted that day.
Yes.
So you were two girls that ran away?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Just as Hellen has said, as the dawn came in, as we were resting, it was me, Susan, who asked Hellen to take me out.
Ah, so it was you.
Take me out. I had a running stomach. And as she took me, coming back, of course I dozed off and slept. Then, as these people entered, I also heard, just as she said, she narrated, I heard in Acholi, their language, how they were saying, open the door.
What were they saying?
Uyabdugola, like that. Then, Mary Azore, who was my opposite cubicle mate, said, girls, here is the door, jump out. Then that voice entered my head, and it's from that point that I crossed the corridor and jumped through the window where Mary ran from. Just that's how I ran away.
When you were running to follow that voice, where was Hellen? Where were the other girls?
The girls were screaming in the house, in the room. As me, I crossed and jumped out, hearing Mary's voice.
You weren't afraid?
I was afraid. I don't know the power that brought the issue of following the voice of Mary. I think it was my savior.
How do you both remember so much about that night and the events that followed? Because you've documented your story in 2 books. How do you remember all of this?
After we all came back, we talked about it, we compared notes, but you know, this is something you cannot forget. It will take the rest of my life to forget about what happened.
Okay. So you had a party at the school the night before?
Yes.
And during the party, one of the girls says, let's not talk about death. And then this happens the next day.
Yes.
And you're taken. What happens after you were taken?
In the school?
Yes.
Susan should tell us.
Susan, what happened?
After they were taken. That night, that dawn, it was that dawn. And it happened for us when we jumped onto the window. We ran through the college, and lights were all over. Reaching the boys' wing, we found books scattered. We crossed, because the college was more than Common College, which is a second. We crossed running. I was following Mary. She was an athlete and she was very fast. So when we reached somewhere, we had to lie now and rest, hide. And to our surprise, the company boys were also there in the gardens. So when morning came, we got her coming back,
Screaming and coming back. We were in night dresses, coming back to the college. Only to reach, we found them gone. The scene was sad. We burst into screaming, crying, and by then, the relatives had run to the college because announcements, and some students had run, the boys of college, Komboni, had run back up to police in town. So people came over and it was wailing.
it was a very bad scene that I kept on crying. Helen was young. For me, I was there as a very married woman.
So you were 24 years old, Helen was 21.
Yes. I was crying. Why Helen? Helen is a baby. And we call her
Baby at school. So I said, why Helen? They would have taken us. Who are what? Who are old.
Okay. So Helen, you're taken with 24 other girls,
Yes.
23 other girls.
23.
And 11
I
boys.
was the 24th.
You're the 24th. And you got to meet Joseph Coyne at a point.
Yes.
What was that like? What happened?
It was such a scary moment because we had already passed through scary moments as well. We crossed River Shore 3 times. The highest point, it was here, the bushes, and
The water was up to your neck.
yes. And when we met Joseph Coyne, I thought, are we really going to be released? Because they were actually telling us on the way that we were going to be released because they abducted us for a purpose. That
What was that purpose?
they said that they normally hear from radios and newspapers that they are no longer active, but they were finished. So they wanted to make a statement, and we were the tool. So they said, oh, we are so happy, we are on news, even the international one. So thank you for a job well done. We are going to release you, but after you meet our person.
So you meet him,
Yes.
and then?
And then he said he was actually releasing us.
What did he strike you as? What kind of figure did he, strike you as?
In fact, his appearance shocked me because I expected to see a monster from the story I would read, from the news I would watch. But when he walked in, he seemed so friendly. He was young then, small, and he was light and friendly, seemingly. So it was shocking for us. And we were like, what is happening? Who is this person?
Yes, Susan. What picture did you have of him?
Oh, for me, that moment when they reached up to the college, my regrets were how big, how giant, how strong is this man who bypasses all the security. For your information, that evening, they had put us UPDF soldiers were guarding the college. I remember very clearly it was a Lent period and it was a rainy season. It drizzled the whole evening. And when we were in our party there, the boys crossed and said, you know, we are safe because we see the soldiers have come and said the security is okay.
Wow. So the kind of person who was commandeering a group that could bypass our top security and make their way, pick up girls and take them across. Okay. So, Helen, when you got to a certain point, they released some of the girls and they handpicked you and 4 other girls to stay. And all of the boys stayed. Did they ever explain why you were asked to stay, why you were made to stay?
No, they didn't. Because actually, when Joseph met us, one of the girls asked for water. And my friends told me I volunteered, but I don't remember doing that. I remember I was unpicked, and only the 5 young girls were unpicked. So they told us we were going to the river to collect water for the person who had asked for it. But when we reached a certain point, they told us the order had changed and we should wait for another instruction. And there and then, I knew something wrong.
There was no explanation as to why
No.
those ones were freed and you were kept behind?
No.
So what happened when you saw Susan, these girls come back and she wasn't one of them?
So for us, when these were now still in, we kept on disturbing offices. Me and Mary, who was so much of a problem in the offices. We kept on saying, "What have you done?" We kept on going there every day. "You people, have you followed? Where is it?" There was a time I remember we were near a little hotel trying to go to the barracks. They said, "You girls, you want to be killed." We said, "But our sisters, they are out." So when we camped at St. Augustine, which is a chapel for Church of Uganda in town. So when we camped there, when these girls came, they were made to stay there. So when they came and then they told us, those of Helen have remained. Then we said, no, this monster. Why do they pick this young girl? We used to call her baby. So it really pained me more and more.
At a certain point, Helen, you said, before I actually get to that, was anything actually being done from your observation back home? Was anything being done to try and find them, to follow them up?
What I recall very well was the students, the very night, the morning when this happened, parents running, then some children who had even run naked up to the police, parents collected clothes. There was an announcement which police voluntarily moved in town and started announcing, Ngeta Hill has been attacked. Parents go and pick children. Some children have already been taken. So that was what was done. Then after that, I remember very well Honorable Maratubo had to come in. And he went to the barracks and said, the girls have been taken. This is in town. What is this? Why has this happened? So even like some activists came up, trying, the teachers, the parents, mothers, they started saying, why can't they move? Why can't they go and follow up? Then they told us, the government, through, I remember it was it Jedobar? They told us, you know, the soldiers are following. They are following. They are following.
And that was the end of it all. How did you come to get released, Helen?
It was actually a normal day for me, and that morning they caught one of the boys escaping, and they told us they had an emergency meeting, and they told us we, the newly abducted, would be the ones to kill him. And as I was just there thinking about what I was about to go through, killing an innocent person, then a boy walked in and said, Commander Man wants to see you. So I walked in, but with questions. I didn't know what to expect. So when I reached there, they told me, sit, be comfortable. And they ordered the other boy to go and get for me a packet of biscuit and tea. And then he started telling me his own story. He said, Helen, I'm releasing you today. I want you to go back to school. And we are sorry. He was apologetic. And he said, Kitgum town main road is 15 kilometers from here. When we reach, you will go. Here is transport money, 3,000, and put on your best. Go and bathe at least today. But at that moment, if I didn't have a vision for my life and for my family, I was not actually going to accept the release. Why? Because I felt his pain. I wanted to be there for him and, you know, tell him I'm so sorry for what you're going through.
He told you he had daughters as well?
Sisters.
Sisters?
Yes. And you could see he really had a lot of pain.
Do you remember how long you were in captivity? Were you able to keep track of the days?
From the calculations I did, I think it was 19 days.
Okay. So you were released and you came back home?
Yes.
What happened after that? What was the mood at home? What did you think when you saw her?
Oh, first of all, on her arrival, I wasn't in the group. I was in the village. I was also going through a lot of counseling, because for me, after that happened, I went through a lot of trauma, dreaming wild dreams and running away from the house. So I was there, but when I heard, I came and met the girls when she was at St. Augustine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to tell me a bit more about her return, and you'll share what you remember about it, Helen, when we return. Let's take a short break.
We offer professional barber, hairdressing at Lugogo Mall, Garden City, Forest Mall, Oasis Mall, and Acacia Mall. Sparkle Salon, professional, affordable, and quality services.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. Tonight we're hearing from Hellen and Susan, who were both in 1991. Well, Hellen was abducted in 1991 and Susan had a near miss. But Susan, you were telling me about what you went through, the counseling that you had to go through. Hellen, did you ever have counseling after you came back?
It wasn't, we didn't.
How come?
I just couldn't explain, and as a person, I was young then, I thought it wasn't necessary. I would have looked for it, but I thought people would have given us counseling, but there was nothing.
Your family?
I had to go through the pain alone. There were certain things that I started doing and people misinterpreted me. I
Things
had
like
to.
what?
I started going to the bush. I would be refreshed. I was fearing people then, but you know, I would be relieved if I walked to the nearby shrub or bush. It was more healing. At home, you know, it was like somebody had died because people kept on coming and, you know, they would cry and it was hard for me. It was not helping me to recover. So I would escape and
go to a nearby bush.
Yes, and go to the nearby bush.
And also to add on what she's trying to say about what you asked about counseling. You know, there was no platform. There was no platform for counseling. I must say there was no any team prepared to do that. And the case of NTC is very unique because when the girls came back and they were resumed with their families, and that was all.
The focus was on people who never came back.
Yeah. So the counseling bit was not there. Some of us now who were survivors, we just got it from families.
Okay. What was your family's reaction when you got back?
Actually, I remember so clearly the day I arrived. As I was being driven from the barracks, I thought, what is happening in Lira town today? The crowd was really so big. And
they had been alerted that you were coming?
Yes, they had been alerted and the whole of Lira town was in St. Augustine. So I stepped out the van, so happy, so excited that I was home, and I was confused though because why the crowd? But immediately I realized most of them were relatives and friends and then the other well-wishers. So, but immediately people started crying and I was like, what is wrong with these people? Why are they crying? And me, I was excited. It was a very exciting moment for me. I was free, I was home, and I was alive. And that was...
What did your parents do or say?
Actually, the day I was abducted, they were burying my cousin. And it was really so hard for them. They got to know the day of the burial. And somehow the burial stopped when they realized. And I'm their first daughter. It was painful for her. I remember when my mother got the news, she escaped and people had to run after her.
So now you come back home?
Yes.
What happened? What did your mother say?
She was like the prodigal son. Now you're back and your life. And she said, you're not going back anywhere. In fact, going back to school was a problem. They never wanted me to go back to school.
Oh. I don't think we've had a number of stories. Most of the stories that we know are from Aboke girls.
Yes.
Very few people have actually come out to talk about the other stories from the other people that were taken out. So Hellen's story, this particular story is in her book called The Journey of Grace. And how long did it take you writing this book?
I actually took about 5 years.
5 years?
It was ready for a long time, but then the challenge was how do I get it?
So 5 years you're writing a book, but you've never been counseled. So you're reliving things that happened to
Yes.
you without counsel.
No.
Do you, is there anything left behind from that time of the, are there any long-lasting effects from the abduction that still haunt you up to now?
Yes, I remember so clearly when we were separated from the other girls, when the other girls were released and the 5 of us were retained, and then I was also taken to another group. The other 4 also were distributed to another group. In my group, I think that was my 6th day in the bush. I remember I was called by one of the boys that they wanted to see me. And from there, I found 2 other boys there, and I was raped. And it's a sad moment. It's something I don't want to remember. But it happened. I can't change. It's how I cope with it.
Well, you mentioned that in your other book, The Scar, that you were raped. It was actually one line. I was looking for the background into it, and it wasn't there, but you've opened up that book now. So this happened while you were in the bush.
Yes.
And it set the stage for your next book, The Scar. When you came back and you were now married, you're planning to get married.
Yes, wedded.
To get, okay. And you find out you were HIV positive.
Yes.
It never occurred to you after you were raped that...
No, probably if we had gone through counseling or medical checkup or something like that.
So when you came back from the bush, there was no medical checkup, nothing?
There was nothing.
There was nothing. The scenario was they came, she arrived, and even the other girls when they arrived and they were handed over to
The families.
the families, and that was it. No medical checkup.
So the families were also not prepared on how to receive these girls and
No.
They were just excited we were back.
Okay. So at what age did you now find out you're HIV positive?
I was 33.
This is about 10 plus years later.
Yes.
But you were healthy and
Very,
everything
very
was okay.
healthy. Yes.
So what made you go for an HIV test?
When we were preparing for the wedding, my church required us to take an HIV test results for us to be accepted to wed. So we did that as a routine. We thought they just wanted the results. So I went with my husband, and I told him I would be busy. You could go and pick the results. And that was the day we were actually starting our wedding meeting. So he went and picked the result. I actually called him around 3. I said, Wilson, please remember to go and pick the results. And he went and picked. And that was the day we were starting the wedding meeting. The wedding meeting ended, and we went home, ate, slept. And then at 1, he called me.
1 a.m.?
Yes.
And he says, I have something to tell you. And then?
I was so scared. I was like, what did I do? Is he calling off the wedding? I'd even forgotten about the HIV test. But I walked in. I walked out of the bedroom because he wanted us to talk from the sitting room. And he said, Helen, you know what? We are HIV positive. And he kept quiet. He was looking strong, but, you know, from behind you would imagine he had thoughts. And he told me one thing, that nobody should know about it because we were going to be discouraged from the wedding. And he told me, Helen, we should not point fingers. We should not ask where the disease came from.
That's a very noble, because then it would be easy to think that he had a reason for telling you not to point fingers or telling you to keep it secret from everybody. That was very noble.
Yeah, but then I remember when I met him, I didn't tell him about the rape. And somehow I blamed myself. And I remember days later I prayed, I said, God, protect my husband and my child so that they don't suffer the pain of HIV. And you people, you should be careful about what you ask God. I suffered, I had a bad skin for 10 years. And my husband didn't have a dot on his skin.
He never ever suffered?
No.
What was it like back in the day? This was what? How many? Which year was this? 2000, perhaps 2004?
Yes, 2003.
So what was it like accessing treatment for HIV then?
It was so difficult. It was actually for the rich. And I remember asking that, what is it for us? What are we going to do from here? And my husband said, Helen, let's look after the baby that we have. God will make a way for us.
Did you worry about the baby, Gerald?
Yes, so much. I actually asked for 5 years. I said, God, just give me 5 years. So that is old enough to stay with a relative or with a friend.
Okay. But you later had another baby.
Yes.
After Gerald said, Mommy, I want
another
a
child.
sibling.
Yes. He kept on asking, actually, and he would tell me, Mommy, I am going to save my money so that we can buy a child. But one time, as we were walking home, he said, Mommy, me, I know how babies are got. You should give me a baby.
And to chip in,
Yes.
And
I'm one of the people she called. She came to consult. And Susan, I want to have a second baby. And I said, I was seeing her skin. And I was like, okay, we are going to pray about it. And it was happened at that time, the husband was to go abroad. And she said, I want him to go when I'm pregnant. I said, are you crazy, Helen? Then I just told her, okay, go. We are praying over it. But she was determined.
Did you ever discourage her, considering?
Internally, I was discouraging her, looking at her skin. But she was so determined. And I just told her, we pray over it.
in fact, my baby was more determined. He said, Mommy, I'm going to pray and it's going to be okay. So one time as we were walking home, he said, Mommy, I prayed. Now you can give me the baby, even if it is a girl, but I want a boy.
So when you talk about that, and Susan says she was looking at your skin and thinking, no,
This is finished.
there must have been stigma because back in what, 2003, 2004, we didn't have as many people educated about HIV as we do now. You mentioned there was stigma, for example, at your workplace.
Yes. There were whispers. The people would call me names, the woman with a bad skin, the woman who is sick. But there was one incident that I remember. A colleague in office came and said, Helen, you're infecting us with your cough.
Wow.
Go home. I said, but I'm strong enough because I'm a person who really wants to work. I don't want to be dormant. It's not my kind of person. I told him, I'm strong enough. I'm going to work. I'm not going home.
I remember from your book, your supervisor,
Yes.
and I wrote down his remarks because they really stayed with me. He said, Helen, I'm not sending you home because you're coughing. I am doing it because you have been solemnly offended.
Yes.
How did you feel? Because that was
I felt that there was really somebody who cared. Who understood. But immediately I walked out of office, then I looked at my skin. I kind of forgave the person immediately. I said, even me, if I was in his place, I would have concern for my own life.
Do you think we're doing enough as a country in the fight against HIV? I mean, we get praised a lot, but
yeah, I think
ground.
we are, except the challenge. Now I've started going to school, and I have realized that the students that are HIV positive are being stigmatized because they take their drug from a central position, and they normally have to sneak in there, and they don't want people to see them, and most of them miss their drugs, and most of them are not doing well. And it's a difficult thing for them because they take these drugs on an empty stomach. I was like, can't they get for them a cup of porridge when they're taking their medicine? Isn't that possible?
okay. Well, let's continue with this. Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back. Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. We are speaking to Hellen Auma, who is sharing her journey from being abducted by the LRA to living with HIV and now going out to schools to be able to speak to young people who are going through what you went through when you were 33 years old, when you found out your HIV status. Thank you once again, Hellen, for sharing your story. You also participate in this campaign against HIV, Susan.
Yes, because I happen to work with the National Community of Women Living with HIV/AIDS as a program coordinator in the Mutumba district. You'd asked us about the issue of how much the government, the country has done towards the reduction of HIV/AIDS. It's also my concern about the young, where Hellen has taken the route on counseling and maybe mentoring those in schools. I would say the government has done much on medication, but psychosocial support, because most of the clients, when they're back at home, there's still that bit of stigma. There's still that neglect, especially for the youth, where Hellen is mentoring, is mainly measuring. The youth, the young positives, whom we call young positives, they are left. Because when you look at the health facilities, the young youth-friendly services, which are meant to be confidential, which are meant to take care and really dig deep into these children, is not available. Also the counselors who are at the facilities who are giving this medication, they are not many. They don't give enough. So I urge that much could be done on that psychosocial support on the young who are positive. Because they reach a point they want to produce, they want to marry, they want to have jobs.
And they don't have that information. Well, one of the things that actually comes out of your story, Hellen, is you were going for treatment.
Yes.
And you found it was mostly women in the same space as you, and you were wondering, where are the men?
Where are the men?
Did you ever get any answers?
I actually didn't, but I just got an understanding that men take long to accept that they have a problem. The reason, if you realize more men are dying of HIV and women are surviving, because they take long. By the time they go for treatment, it's late.
You also mentioned in your book that there were 2 women that were getting treatment at the same time as you, and they went to church and they were prayed for and they stopped coming back for medication.
Yes.
What happened to them?
The good thing at the place where I get my medication from, JCRC, they have a very good follow-up. They were followed because you have, when you're being enrolled, you give your next of kin with their telephone numbers. They drive you the first time up to your home. So it was easy for them to be traced, and they were brought back for treatment. But it was after 2 months because they had shifted from the first place where they were.
How were they when they were brought back for treatment? Because you really can't force somebody to come back if they believe that they're now not sick anymore.
They were really looking bad. They were looking bad, and they had to be hospitalized at the center for quite some time. But they recovered eventually.
But that happens a lot, that we are told, you know, people go to church and they're prayed for and told you don't need to take the medication anymore.
I believe in healing as well. I've been healed several times, but I know that we need to get tested to prove that we are actually healed. If you're healed of malaria, go and test. If the malaria virus is not there. If you're healed of a certain thing, go and test, go and confirm if it is not there.
Do you? Yes, Susan.
Just to add on that, is that biblically, if we are to go the way of religion, the healing, the medication is also accepted in the Bible. So we always encourage these women, especially from my point of view where we work, I encourage them that they need to treat, at the same time pray. So also urge the churches to encourage them to take their medicine faithfully while praying and trusting that they will be healed, but not to leave the medicine.
And then if they feel really have been healed, like Hellen says, go and
test and prove.
Not just one test though.
No, not just one test.
Okay. Okay, well, do you think that organizations should require their employees to do HIV tests?
I think they should be encouraged to do HIV tests, not forced. It's the right thing to do because people are dying when they are not supposed to die.
It's quite important because they need to know their status. It helps you to plan well. It helps you to be focused and even prepared. And it also helps others around you.
How has it helped you knowing your status? What things would you point a finger to and say that when I found out my status, this is how it helped me plan better or prepare myself for eventualities or whatever?
So many things, actually. One of my best friend, I said, you know, if this happens, I want you to have my baby, to take care of him, and they started a relationship. And God forbid, if I had died the other time, my son was going to find a place to live in. So I took it positively. It wasn't like immediately. There were cries. There were times that I didn't know I could wake up the next morning. But slowly, I said, this is it. This is my life. And probably I'm going to live like this for the rest of my life. But what is this person going to do? This innocent baby. Then he was little. So I had to.
How old are your children now?
21 and 9.
And 9?
Yes.
Okay. Wow. What would you like somebody, I know you never had support. I don't know if you ever, as the team that came back from captivity from Nyeta, I don't know if you ever had a support group where you could support each other and maybe talk about the things that happened, since you never had any support from outside. What would you tell somebody that's been through, maybe they're not abducted, but maybe they're dealing with something else, they're dealing with HIV or anything else? What would you tell them?
I would tell them 3 things. That in life, there are trials. And these trials is just for a short time. And each one of us really go through our own test. And then secondly, that we are strong enough. The way we are created, God created us strong enough to fight anything on our own in the first place. But of course, their support group, if we open to a cycle of friends, they will come in. So they should open, not to seek pity, but to seek help.
In your book, you actually say something about do not advertise your problems.
Yes.
Why?
Why? Because
I mean, we're in the era of social media, so everyone's problems are everywhere on social media. The first thing they do in the morning is post on Facebook and say, this and this happened to me.
Because everybody is dealing with their own issues. All of us have problems that we're dealing with, and then the next time, before you know it, somebody is talking about your issues. You know, it's not a good thing. And you attract pity to yourself. And that is something I didn't want, to attract pity.
Okay. What would you say, Susan, to somebody who is maybe going through something and they don't see the end of it?
I would give hope.
How?
I would encourage one to have hope and being focused. And finally, really, one has to be open about the situation you're going through. And above all, faith. When you're focused, you're open, and you trust in the living, you are able. Because this is life experience some of us have also gone through. And I trust her because for her, she's been that. She's open, she does not hide it, and she's focused, and she has faith. She's an evidence, she's a testimony, a living testimony, which many people should copy.
And there's one thing that normally when I go through a challenge, I had issues of school fees. I had other issues that came along the way. But if I get a problem today, it's so easy for me now. It was difficult then. I ask, what is it? What is the good side about this challenge that I have? So I look to the positive and kind of ignore the negative. It's not that it's a problem. I accept this is the issue, but what is the good about this?
You've gone through quite a lot, Helen. So
yes.
What would we say is the good? What do you say is the good that's come out of, 1, your abduction, and 2, you're living positively now?
I am not afraid of anything because of what I have gone through. And secondly, I've realized that no problem is permanent. This comes for a season and it goes. And I really thank God that my HIV status condition had to be full-blown. If it wasn't full-blown, probably I was going to keep quiet, and this moment wouldn't have been there. Maybe it is for a reason, and everything that happens in life is for a reason. And I think the reason I got that bad skin, it was for this moment. It's for the mentorship that I do. That is the good about the HIV.
Okay. Well, you haven't spoken about your husband at all. Would have loved to have him here.
Yes. Yeah, he's really been supportive. I remember those days when I was still with a bad skin, and he would have office parties, and incidentally I would be the only girl in the party. He wasn't ashamed.
Wow.
That's brave.
He's a great person. He's been there.
Okay. Well, what would you like to tell us as we close our session, because our time is fast spent? What would you like us to go away with from your story? Susan, I'll start with you.
Well, for me, Helen has really helped us as women. My message just is that I wish God could make us have more of women of that nature. I encourage the women that most of us are bogged down with issues, with challenges, and we sleep over it. And this is a good platform, a good gesture for you to speak out and be brave, to go head on your problem. Okay. And we can.
Well, she went head on. I remember from the book there's a point at which she mentioned that she was the first female teacher in Akokoro SSS, and and you were the first female teacher.
Yes.
But then you decided to do a business on the side, and you were selling pancakes.
I was selling pancakes and actually boiled cassava, and the proceeds from that I used it for building a house for my parents in the village. And I do a lot of that. I am a vendor, I would say, like that. I shop for pregnant women. I sell bed sheets and bed covers. That's what I do, besides the mentoring.
Wow. Well, thank you very much. Helen, what would you like us to go with from your story?
That every challenge that we get, it's for a season, and that you're not alone. God is always there. And then when you pass through it, there will always be a celebration. I celebrated this yesterday. I launched my book.
Oh, you launched your books yesterday?
Yes.
The Journey of Grace and the Scar. Okay.
Yes.
Well, congratulations on that achievement.
Thank you.
And we'd like to say thank you once again, both of you, for joining us on the show for tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you too.
We'll wrap it up tonight and wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And that's it for our program for tonight. Coming up is NTV Weekend Edition. Keep it NTV.
Renew your monthly basic bouquet subscription of 18,000 shillings before it expires. Then enjoy 3 free days only on StarTimes. Enjoy digital life.